Welcome back to Red and Blue. This launch of Senator Tim Scott's Presidential Exploratory Committee brings him one step closer to officially announcing a run for high office. But he would face heavy competition in any bid for the Republican presidential nomination. Officially, there are now 4 GOP candidates for president, with the most recent being former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson. Several other big names in the GOP seem to be setting up their own campaigns, but have yet to officially enter the race. That's where we are as we begin this Wednesday night. Astead Herndon joins us now. He's national politics reporter for the New York Times and host of the Run Up podcast. Astead joining us from New York City. We thank you for doing that. What do you make of Senator Scott's announcement and what he said in that announcement today?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I'm going to thank you for having me, first off. And I thought that in the interview, he laid out kind of the broad strokes of what we expect to be his message in this race. He has tried to pitch himself as someone who is more optimistic, someone who is not stuck in the grievances of Donald Trump or in the grievances that have really engulfed the Republican Party largely. He really sees himself as a more inspirational figure that can really pitch a more positive spin on the Republican base and really have them orient around the idea that if they become forward-looking, if they become focused on beating Joe Biden, then that will lead to better results rather than trying to extract revenge against Democrats or focus more broadly on cultural issues. I think that's going to be the lane he tries to run in. But I think as you can tell, it's going to be difficult when he is unwilling to really attack Donald Trump from the start. And I also heard that in this interview, given multiple times to really point out the differences and the real problems Trump has created for the GOP, even in the midterms. He has sidestepped that. So that really shows the challenge that he's up against. He wants to pitch himself as forward-looking. He wants to pitch himself as inspirational, but he doesn't want to tear down the biggest and most important figure in the Republican Party, who also happens to be his opponent.
Well, he's shown an ability, a capacity to win South Carolina statewide by big margins in Congress. Yeah. Is he even the favorite, though, in South Carolina in this theoretical primary he's joining?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, to the extent that we have answers to that, as we should say, it's early, but there was a good poll that came out of South Carolina today, and it showed Donald Trump leading as expected around the 40% number. And you had Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis really next to each other around that 20% number. And then came someone like Tim Scott. I think that really shows you the mountain that he is up against, even in his own state. You know, the general idea when someone gets in with the benefit of having an early state is that they can use that as a propeller to look ahead. But it could also be a really damaging thing, too. If you don't perform well in your home state, it becomes a reason for the other states to look at you and say, well, how should we prefer you here if the home state wasn't putting you above other candidates there? So it's a dual problem. I think back to 2020 when I was reporting on the Democrats, and Elizabeth Warren finishing third in her home state ended up being the kind of final blow for that campaign. It can be a real blessing and curse to have that home state in the early mix. And for Scott, he has to show real viability in South Carolina if this campaign is going to have any hopes of really driving a national attention.
You know, speaking of those who've not gotten in the race officially yet, Ron DeSantis goes to Ohio, goes to New Hampshire in the coming days. What do you make of where he stands in all this?
Yeah, it's been interesting seeing Ron DeSantis kind of navigate the last couple months. Over since January 15th, my colleague Nate Cohn recently did a piece about how his poll numbers, Ron DeSantis, have really fallen off, how Donald Trump's really coalesced support. Some of that might be people rallying around him after the indictment, but even more than that, it could be someone who are looking at the positions Ron DeSantis is taking, and it's chipping away at that early insulation that he had. I'm thinking about the position on Ukraine he took that really caused some wedges between him and Mike Pence and people like Nikki Haley. I'm thinking of the position he's taking in the South Carolina State House right now as they put together a 6-week abortion ban. These are things that, Ron DeSantis is trying to walk a very careful line in terms of growing his name recognition from the confines of the governor's house. And it's been something he has done successfully up until this point. But as Donald Trump's attacks have increased and as the Republican primary has really heated up, he has seen some fall off from that support. And so, it's not 5 alarm fire for Ron DeSantis right now because he hasn't announced to that point. He's still trying to drive energy and interest in donors. But at the same time, the luster on the star is a little less than it was a couple months ago. And if you're going to beat Donald Trump, that's already a problem.
National politics reporter for the New York Times, Astead Herndon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.